All right, everybody, good afternoon. You know what time it is. You know what it's all about. We got Pro Football Focus stuff to look at. It's not going to be very fun this week. I can tell you that right now. We're not going to have a lot of good things to look at, but still got to look at it. We still got to try to learn what we can and try to find meaningful takeaways. So we're going to start with the offense. Um, I want to remind everybody that this video is not a complete endorsement of Pro Football Focus. I'm not saying they always get it right, nor am I saying that they always get it wrong like some people do. I just think it's interesting to look at what they do and how they work and try to get a feel for what their criteria might be and what they're breaking down. All right, so please like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to support the channel. Let's take a look at the overall grades. To the surprise of no one, JSN leads the way. JSN 77.3, our best graded player on offense. And, I mean, he was our best player overall. I know he wasn't our best graded player. We'll get to that in the second video later today. But he was our best graded offensive player, which he certainly deserves. Really, really good game. And he now actually has a 1,000-yard season if you count his rushing yards. So that's a bright spot here. He is really, really becoming a special player this last month and a half or so. So that's nice. We got that going for us. Charles Cross gets graded very well, mostly because of his pass protection, 76.3. The raw numbers on Cross aren't great, though. We'll take a look at that later. So I think this probably goes back to that theory that Charles Cross is having to overcome some really disadvantageous situations. This team is too one-dimensional, and they find themselves in must-pass situations too much, and Charles Cross's play suffers for it. But that doesn't mean it's an indictment on him as a player. So I continue to believe we have a very good player there at left tackle. Alani barely played, so I'm not really going to get into that. He was graded well, but it's 3 plays. Abe Lucas also graded quite well, which I really don't agree with. Unlike Cross, who I think played fine yesterday until he gave up a sack in garbage time. And he gave up a sack on Sam Howell. I think sacks on Sam Howell don't count. But Abe Lucas, to my eye, was getting bullied. I'm really surprised about this grade. I got to be honest. I don't think I agree with it. So I'll just leave it at that. But at least somebody thought he played well, so I guess that's kind of good. And Zach Charbonnet rounds out the top 5, graded well, which makes sense. Is worth noting, though, they didn't like what he was doing on passing plays. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But, yeah, they thought he played well running the ball, which he did. Geno Smith still graded out respectably well. This is not the first time we've seen this year. Geno Smith plays a game that a lot of people think is atrocious, and Pro Football Focus comes back and says, no, he was one of the better players on the team. And again, with Geno, you're really talking about one really bad throw, and it was a really bad throw, but there's a lot of other things going on that play too. Some people pointed out that, oh, the play before was also a pretty bad throw, and I could definitely see that, but it ended up being relatively harmless. And if any quarterback in the league deserves some luck on his turnover-worthy plays, it's Geno Smith. The guy has been incredibly unlucky this year on turnover-worthy plays, so I don't fault him getting one interception dropped. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that's something we need to make a big deal out of when he's thrown several interceptions this year that are very clearly not turnover-worthy plays. But it does kind of highlight this thing where, whatever you want to say about him, he is the best that we can do. And there's every reason to believe that he's still playing well despite the problems that persist. Like, even on that one really bad throw, we got 3 receivers running a route in the same part of the field in the back of the end zone. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know how Ryan Grubb thinks that's a good idea. I don't know how Ryan Grubb thinks that's going to produce good results. But there you go. Bobo, pretty decent grade. It was one of his best grades of the year. Still can't block, which is really weird. But he did come up with a 3rd down snag, so he does get a half-decent grade, I guess. McIntosh did okay as well. He didn't play a lot, but 64.5. He's coming along here. DK Metcalf, okay, right? Derek Young, only 3 snaps, about average, whatever. Kind of anonymous in here. And then you get down to a long list of players that were below average or worse. And you can see where the problems kick in. We got too many players like this. Oluwatimi, only played 11 snaps. I'm not going to drill him too much, but when he was in there, I don't think he played very well. I'm not going to ascribe a ton of meaning to it, but I don't think he played that well. And who knows if he would have been able to dig himself out of the hole. He had a penalty in this game. I think he blew up at least one block that I remember. It's not good. No Fant, not good. And this is becoming kind of business as usual for him. That contract continues to be a glaring mistake from the offseason. Jalen Sundle, I mean, I'm going to cut him some slack because he's a third-string center. And there were some good moments, but overall you can see that he's not really starter caliber. And we have too many players like this, and I'm done. I'm done, like, leaning heavily on guys like Oluwatimi and Sundle and Mike Jarrell and being like, okay, this is the future because they look not terrible for a couple of games. That's not good enough. We need more players like Charles Cross. We need more players that are actually good. None of this, we can survive. There might be one player on a 5-man offensive line that you can survive with just being passable, but the other guys need to be good, or else the passable guy gets hung out to dry too much. You can have like one weak link on your offensive line, and you can cover him up if the other players are good, but you got to actually get the other players that are good. Pharaoh Brown, super anonymous. Mike Jarrell, it's garbage time, doesn't mean anything. Same with Christian Haynes. Tyler Lockett turns in another game where, well, the penalties were the main problem here. He had 2 penalties. Really bad, can't happen. But even beyond the penalties, it's like you gotta get open every now and then, and it's just not happening anymore. And there might be only 3 games left in Lockett's NFL career, and you can see things winding down. I believe that he probably still has a big moment left in him, but he's running out of time to express that. Laken Tomlinson played way too good last week, apparently, because he reverted back to the mean. Laken Tomlinson, 46.7. To my eye, he was bad, and PFF agrees. So, there you go. AJ Barner, awful. And he only played 17 snaps, so we can't even say we played him too much this week. We can't use that excuse. So, he's just not ready for this yet. We probably already overworked him this year. And we need Noah Fant to do something the rest of the way. That much I do know, because AJ Barner, not only was he a non-factor in the passing game, you can see how poor his grade was in that regard, but he blew a block on 2nd and 1 that caused us to settle for a field goal. So, not good. Toa Lomia, this is another guy. This is what I'm talking about, right? Sometimes we get these guys in there that look kind of passable and we get excited, but then you look at these guys over the course of an extended period and you get this sometimes, and you can't have this. This isn't okay. Like, this is way too bad. Like, I could understand being in like the 50s every now and then, but you can't be this bad. And we'll talk more about Lomia later, but you want to talk about somebody who really, really is showing that he doesn't, that he just doesn't have the consistency right now, and he can get better. But this is a very deep hole to dig out of, man. And Sam Howell, to the surprise of nobody, the worst player on offense by far. And I don't know if he was actually worse than Lomia, but it was more viscerally bad. So I get it, right? And that's it for the overall grades. The passing chart, I'm not going to look at Sam Howell's passing chart because I know what it would look like. I don't even need to do that. I do like to look at Gino's passing chart every week, though, just to get a feel for where things are going. And I will say, we continue to use the middle of the field at a pretty decent rate, like close to half of Gino's attempts. A little bit less than half this week, actually, because we didn't use the intermediate middle at all. So not as much as usual, but you can see he actually did manage to get 2 passes off deep down the field. I think this one was to JSN. And this one here might be, this one might actually have been to JSN as well, I'm not sure. But he did actually manage to get 2 passes deep down the field, which, given how the offensive line played, is actually pretty impressive. And then he got a couple, like 3 intermediate passes off, and everything else was just short. So you can see he's trying, right? He's trying. He had, what is this, 13 attempts either within 10 yards or behind the line of scrimmage. Like, what else can you do? He's trying out there. And you can see that Grubb is also making some kind of an attempt to keep things short and sweet with this offense because of the pass protection. But what really sticks with me are those 2 third downs where we had long developing passing plays and we don't have the line for it. All right, so that's it for the passing chart. One thing I do want to say here, and the one thing that I will give credit where credit is due for, when you look at the receiving matchups, look at how much JSN got moved around. And this is one thing that I think we got to give a little bit of credit to Grubb on. And I'm not giving a lot of credit to Grubb today because I don't think he called a good game. But look at all the different players that JSN got into coverage on. We've got linebackers, we've got cornerbacks, we've got safeties, we've got a defensive end. I mean, this is the kind of thing you want to do with JSN. You want to keep moving him around and moving him around and moving him around. And you want to find the favorable matchups and allow him to just feast. And you can see that some of these matchups worked a little better than others maybe, but look at all the damage he was able to do. 10 catches, 83 yards in a game where the offense really didn't play well at all. So, hey, that's that's one thing I can hang my hat on right now. Rushing direction, again, we just didn't run the ball enough to get a great sample size. I will note, however, 7 of our rushes were outside the tight end. So we were trying to run the ball to the outside a lot in this game, and you can see overall we had success. Most of it was on one big play, this play off right end here, but even off left end we had success. So I do kind of like that, I guess. I wish we had stuck to it a little bit more. Although it's hard to stick to the run when you fall down 14-0 in the blink of an eye. And you can see that it was more successful than what we were doing inside, in between the tackles. So going off end was actually pretty darn good. So that's kind of cool. Something. It's at least interesting. All right. Avert your eyes because things are about to get really ugly in this video. And I don't know how to protect you from it. These are the pressures allowed by the Seahawks blockers. Where do we start with this one? Oluwatimi was clean, at least in terms of his raw pressures allowed. Okay, Oluwatimi was clean. So was Jalen Sundle. That's about it. By the way, Oluwatimi was still graded really poorly for his pass protection, but he didn't allow any actual pressures. So no harm, no foul, I guess. And Jalen Sundle was actually graded out fairly well here. It wasn't the pass protection that was his problem, but the good stuff kind of ends there, man. Charles Cross, look, the sack was garbage time, and it was on Sam Howell. I don't think I can kill a tackle for allowing a pressure on Sam Howell, much less a sack. Like, he's Sam Howell. He's the ball is glued to his hand. I don't know what else to say. 3 pressures, still not really something you're excited about, but again, I don't think he played badly. So, okay, maybe that, we can mute that a little bit. Abe Lucas, 2 sacks allowed, 3 pressures, that's 5 total, or 3 hurries, so 5 total pressures, pretty bad. They did grade him out respectably well in this area, I will admit. So, maybe it's not as bad, as atrocious as it looks, but it's hard to defend a game where you allow 5 total quarterback pressures as a tackle. Laken Tomlinson, a guard, 2 sacks allowed and 2 more hurries. So that's pretty bad, right? That's not what we saw from him last week and not what we were hoping we would see from him going forward. Zach Charbonnet, 1 hit allowed, 1 hurry allowed, so he sucked too. He had 3 opportunities to pass protect, and he gave something up on 2 of them. So that's actually like bottom of the barrel type stuff if you do the math. And brace for impact, Sataoa Lomia, who got a 1.6 pass blocking grade, by the way, 1 sack allowed, 2 quarterback hits, 7 pressures, 10 total pressures. He's a right guard, people. Okay, he's a right guard. That should be the easiest position to not allow pressures. How do you allow 10 pressures as a right guard? This is so much worse than what Stone Forsythe was doing. I'm not kidding. And look at how much of the pressure that PFF is putting on the offensive line. They're not writing off a lot of them as on the quarterback. And look, that's always going to be a subjective measurement, but 24 pressures that they put on the head of an offensive lineman. They're not just blowing it off as being, oh, it was the quarterback's fault. Like one sack they said was the quarterback's fault. Maybe a couple of pressures. And this is against Green Bay. This isn't against like Pittsburgh. This isn't against Denver. This is against Green Bay. They don't get pressure like this on anybody else. So I'm sorry, but Lomia, you're back in the barrel. And you've got a lot of good play to put out there before our confidence is rebuilt. Like games like this, as a right guard, can't happen. I understand it a little bit at tackle. If you're going up against Aiden Hutchinson or TJ Watt and you give up 10 pressures as a tackle, okay, I kind of get it. You're a right guard, dude. This should never happen. And I know some of it's because he doesn't have good support across from him. Like, you know, he's got Jalen Sundle on his left and he's got Abe Lucas's bum knee on his right. But yikes, man. Run blocking, I don't think there's a ton to take away from here, usually, but I do want to pull up this and highlight the fact that we have really abandoned the zone scheme. Like, look at how many running plays we had in zone scheme. There were like 3, according to PFF. And then we had as many as 12 in gap. So we are living in gap. And in fairness, in this game, I think it worked okay. We ran the ball pretty well against Green Bay. We just had to abandon it because, well, we fell behind too quickly. But you can see that there is clearly a difference in the success this team can have running the ball when they're out in gap. So that's interesting. I wish it mattered more, but you get what you get. All right, so that's it for the Pro Football Focus stuff on offense. We're going to do defense later today. Let me know what you guys think about all this, though. Always interesting to take a look at. I will see you guys later today. Go Hawks, and trying to find something positive right now. DK Metcalf had a good run blocking grade, right? We're happy about that, right? He hasn't been blocking that well this year. This is kind of nice to see. So, maybe that.